Okay.
Yeah, when you've got concentrating on a thought, then you look right into the camera.
Or you want to make a message, or you want to communicate.
Yeah, you feel like you're on a roll, then you sort of, because you never know who's out there. Mikolavsky, Pavel Mikolavsky.
I'm getting a little buzz.
Pavel Mikolavsky.
I don't know where the buzz is coming from.
I've got an unusual name. Where's this one? Polish.
Did you say something about Crete?
No, Cyprus.
Oh, I thought you might
yeah.
Crete.
Okay. Ready? Okay. Wait, let me just get a little fade up.
Okay, moving right along with this theme of the whole tooth, where we talk about the tooth, the whole tooth, and nothing but the tooth. We've just heard from Greg Simmons talking about individuals who have achieved a full potential, a greater potential of physical health in their body by practicing disciplines and procedures given by a 35,000-year-old entity named Ramtha, who channels through a wonderful woman named J.Z. Knight. I'm wanting to elaborate more on this phenomenon with Pavel Mikolavsky, and you're the director of...
I'm a spokesperson for the school.
A spokesperson. Now, when Greg and I were speaking, we were talking about the phenomenon, for example, of better health. And I had mentioned that some people consider that if you're really spiritually focused, you're not caring about the body. Can you elaborate more on the attitude of the teachings of Ramtha in regard to the body?
Well, Ramtha's been teaching about health for 20 years now. And so many different ways he's put it to have us understand that we are the master of our own destiny, and that in terms of health, that the attitudes that are in our way of healing are attitudes that we create. It's our own mind doing it. And that ultimately, God, or the greater mind that you could access and become one with, that is health. It's a natural state of being.
So we just have to be in tune with that deeper part of ourselves?
Well, when you think about how so many people, they hold thought patterns that they are kind of unconscious about for most of the day. You can fixate on your victimization, for example, and not even realize you're doing it because you're so much it that you can't see it. And many people hold on to things like victimization. That's a real good way to get a disease.
Yeah.
That's a very good way to get unhealthy, is to hold on to a thought pattern in which you're a victim of the external world, a victim of time, a victim of a relationship, a victim of an experience. Many people just have that as a status quo in their lives. What Ramtha teaches is to become the master of your destiny, to become the master of your life. And in so doing, you can bring the body into a full state of health.
So if somebody is able to grow a new tooth, which is considered medically impossible, it's not so much that they've grown a new tooth, it's that they've mastered.
They have held in their mind an idea that health can be instantaneous, that total health and regeneration can be instantaneous. And because of that, the body forms around the image in their mind. It forms around what it is they desire. One of the disciplines in the school we teach is field work, where people make cards and put them out on a big field, and they can draw a symbol of whatever it is they want to manifest in their life. Well, one woman drew a symbol of a tooth, and that's a regenerated tooth in her mouth. And through a week's worth of focusing on it, and it did take some time because you've got to overcome the body, and its little rebellion that it wants to
those do. Unconscious habits you were talking about.
Then, at the end of the event, well, the tooth didn't happen yet, but she wanted it so much that she became more that than the attitudes. And that's why it's called a discipline, because you discipline yourself against the unconscious mind that is running its program. So at the end of that week, it hadn't happened, but a week later, she started feeling something. She's going, what is this? She had an x-ray done, and a new tooth was growing. It eventually pushed out the old one, and she was in her 40s.
It's really wonderful, isn't it? So the attitude is that focusing on the body is not unspiritual.
Not at all, no. What Ramtha's teaching now, there's a more advanced level in the school where after you start proving to yourself that you can do some of these things that are quote-unquote miraculous, that the mind of God is so vast, and if you were to put your consciousness on the mind of God itself, put it on that great nothing that is all things, then the unfoldment of so many things that are right for your own progression of your soul will start to occur. And that's happening to people now as well.
And so the disciplines are something that help us overcome resistances that we have. I mean, you talk about two paths, a path of humanity and a path of God.
Right. Our waking day-to-day reality tends to be, for most people, I would say, about the mind of man. It's about being the Son of Man, as Jesus would have said. The unlimited aspect of man is the mind of God, or as Jesus would say, I was operating as the Son of God when I healed Lazarus. You know?
Right.
But both of those are part of us. Part of us going home, part of our evolution is about fully experiencing this realm, which is the human realm, the human body. But what Ramtha teaches is taking that to its ultimate potential, to open the mind greater and greater. We have this mind that's sitting here, this brain, that science is mystified as to how it still continues, that we're using only 1/10 of it, and there's so much more to use. Well, nature, nature makes things atrophy if they're not used. It discards what's not being used in evolution.
So this is like a last-ditch attempt to not get all parts of our brain discarded?
So this is a really great way to start accessing parts of those brain that you normally don't. And that's why a lot of the disciplines are done with your eyes closed, behind a mask. So it directs you inward to access those parts of the brain that normally are not accessed.
Do you find this a joyful experience?
I love it. I love it. It has been hard in the past. Overcoming the physical body, overcoming being hungry sometimes, overcoming being tired of,
or even a doubt.
Or a doubt even. Overcoming your own mind is difficult. It takes some work. And again, it can be done in a moment. It all depends on the person, I believe. But I have found great joy and I look forward to doing these disciplines now. I look forward to Ramtha's latest part of the school, the more advanced levels, because it brings such joy. I mean, it brings such outrageous joy into your life. And to be able to access this mind, so much disappears that has not brought happiness, and much, much more joy is there.
Was there any pivotal moment when you went from the point of being uncomfortable with your body or the doubts to getting to this place where you were joyful about doing disciplines that most people would find boring?
Well, I remember one time we had a long field session. It was probably about 3 hours, which at that time was long. He's done longer ones. And after the second hour, I was really wanting it to be over with. And I started getting grumbly, and I started having an attitude. And of course, you do that, and you start bumping into people, and they start hurting you. But I remembered something he said. He said, it's all your attitude. Your attitude will create your reality. And I said, well, why don't I turn this around then? And I said, okay, I'm going to try it. And sure enough, as I'm walking out there, I said, let me just rejuvenate this body. And the moment I thought it, I felt an electricity through my body. All of a sudden, I started walking tall. The pain in my back was gone. I didn't think about anything but my card, and boom, went right to it.
No, I had a similar experience happen. I mean, you can just change it in a moment.
In a moment.
And so if somebody could have a physical problem, a dentist problem, something, And that could be just a pointer, couldn't it? That could be just a beginning. You work on that and you realize there's so much more available.
Well, if somebody has a toothache, for example, you know, that's just one way that, you know, one example of so many different things that have been healed in the school. I've seen people who have had terrible pain just decide to make a card on it. Make the card, they go work on it, and they forget about it, and boom, the next day they're healed. And it never came back.
Did they find their card, or are they just working and putting the attention on it?
Sometimes it's not even finding the card, it's just doing the work.
Just being aware of that, yeah. Well, thank you so much for elaborating on that, because as I said before, and then with Greg, oftentimes, you know, the body's a little mysterious to people, you know, what their relationship is with their body. And if there's a bad attitude, it can be sloughed off onto the body. And instead of feeling a victim, we can feel encouraged that here's a pointer, here's something that's illustrating that we're spiritual beings, because after all, that experience you had where you changed your attitude after 2 hours and you were standing tall and feeling good, that went onto the body.
Ramtha has told us in the past that the body lives behind. It tends to lag behind the attitude. So that if someone's been sick for a long time, it may take them a little more work to heal themselves. But he's also said that you can wear down doubt. You know, we just don't heal ourselves because we don't believe we can. But doubt is the only thing standing in the way. So someone who can alleviate their doubt in a moment can heal their body instantaneously. And there are miraculous healings in the school that have been instantaneous.
What are some examples?
There was one woman who told me she had diabetes. And diabetes is supposedly uncurable.
Right.
Well, she had an experience where she worked on this in a discipline, and the next day she was completely healed, and she's never had to take insulin since.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm sure there's many cases. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on The Whole
Do you want to
Tooth.
talk about your experience? Just about, because you had a
Which
break
one?
in the school where you saw beyond the blindfolds.
Oh, yeah. I had done being in the tank, you're in a maze, and I'd done being on the field. I didn't find my card, but there were a few steps that I took in no time, which was really, I don't know how to describe it. It's one thing to hear about these possibilities, but it's another thing when you've actually put yourself in the situation where you're taking the steps to change yourself. Anyway, the last thing that we did was we put blindfolds on, and we were dancing, imagining a blue body, because I think that's the body where the changes come from. And initially, it was a little distracting because I realized I was able to see in a very vague kind of way, well, they say like a negative. I would have impressions of where my legs were and my hands, or wherever I was looking, you know, the mat. And it was distracting. And I thought, well, this is a blue body dance, so I should put my attention on that. And then I started to see a lot of blue, an electric blue. And then I started to see a very clear image. And I've often wondered, I mean, since it was so fascinating, and usually in the past, because I've had meditation experiences, that when you become absorbed with the experience goes away. But it seemed as though the more I was focusing on this, the more intense it was getting. And I found that interesting. Now, you talked once about Ramtha coming to you in a dream, or he took you out of your body. Do you think he can give you these experiences, or do you think we stretch up to them?
That's a good question. And you look at, you know, the channel, JZ, and Ramtha, the being that she channels, where does she leave off and does he begin? At a certain point in consciousness, the two of them meet. And he accesses her brain, but she has access to higher mind through him.
Right.
And in the mind of God, ultimately everything is connected.
Well, yeah, because someone could say if you had this beautiful dream and you were taken by Ramtha and you realized he was more than just a regular channel, and they'd say, oh, Pavel, he has it so easy, he was just swept away. And yet I would suspect that in your own life, this path of being the Son of Man, or the being human and being divine, is a path that moment by moment we have to tread and we face our challenges. Is that the case? I mean, it wasn't, I mean, some people, if you had an experience where someone shows you another dimension, but you don't really own that yourself, you haven't really done the work, you could have a lot of doubts. You could feel that someone imposed their awareness on you.
Exactly. And I've had, a lot of doubt that I've had to wear away over the years. I did see into another dimension just from doing the disciplines in the school as well. And when I did that, I realized I had really earned that. I had worked on that. But the experience that happened when Ramtha took me out of my body early on, I had asked for that as well. I mean, I drew that to me. When they say that the teachers, when the student's ready,
the teacher's there,
appears,
yeah.
I had really asked from a very deep place in myself. I wanted to know the truth.
And the same thing must be true of Jay-Z.
I believe that she was prepared for this work, that this was her ultimate destiny.
Because other people can look at the school and say, oh, this poor person, she's giving up her soul and her body, and yet, like you say, there's that crossing of consciousness, that she has access to higher mind, which undoubtedly she must have earned in the past. She must have done work for that. Otherwise, it would be, it could be quite a burden, couldn't it?
I think you're the first interviewer that's ever said that, and I think that's beautiful that you could see that.
Yeah, what I see also in you, when you talk about that experience, that you earned it, because when I've had unusual experiences, I realize if there was a being that was imposing something on me, taking me somewhere that I didn't want to go, maybe even distracting me for a while and kind of blissing me out, still a time would come where I'd realize I want to make that choice to go that place. And so you would suspect that people that can really stick with this, like you go on world tour and you handle all kinds of responsibilities, and even though you don't say that you're promoting the school in a big way, you turn down interviews that could reach 8 million people, you realize that your message is going to those who are ready. But those that are ready are putting a lot of demand on you too. And if you weren't comfortable about what you were doing, you could feel a little put out.
It has to come from the right place. It has to come from really wanting to share from a truth. And also, I've really learned that it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks. I still have some concern about what people think. I'm being very honest, and I've realized those attitudes in myself recently. But more and more I'm letting go of it.
You mean that people think you're in this kind of a funny school living in a remote part of the country?
Well, whenever anyone watches, or talks to you or sees an interview, they're seeing it through their own slice of the diamond. If we are these brilliant diamonds that are much greater than the human dimension that we live on, then they're seeing it through their own little sphere of the diamond, and everything is going to be skewed in that direction, when there may be more, much more, right in front of them that they're not capable of seeing. So that from my perspective, if I feel that someone holding me in a limited light, I'm going to feel it because I'm very sensitive to thought. You get very sensitive to thought in the school. But there's a part of me now that just doesn't care, because I know that I'm on my own path and it's perfectly right for me.
Right. You're really strong in yourself that way. What can shake you? What could make you fearful because you've overcome yourself, so to speak? Would you say that? Your
I think
humanity?
that ultimately the great beings that have completely been able to submerge their personality, or the Son of God aspect of themselves, and become one with the Son of Man, and become one with the Son of God, the mind of God, that there is total confidence. For someone like Jesus to be able to go to his death knowing he could resurrect himself. There's a certain confidence in that.
Yeah.
It's also a great test that
Yeah.
I don't want, but I feel that there are great beings that have proved that that's one of the things that he was showing. You know, that ultimately greater mind was so much more real to him than physical mass.
He kept his attention there.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank
you.
you.
For sharing all of this. This is Paula Gloria with The Whole Tooth, where we talk about the tooth, the whole tooth, and nothing but the tooth. And just like teeth are holistically connected to different parts of the body, talking with Pavel, we've learned that each individual is connected, because I sense that although you say the school is not for everyone, and you have no judgment against those who may even judge against you and what you're doing, that you feel what's going on in the school is affecting the totality of the environment. And likewise, whatever's happening in the environment comes back and is processed and worked through in the school.
Well said.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, right.